we will continue it with a great, great guest. I must tell you that this guy that I'm going to introduce you to, because some of you may not have met him before, was my co-host, regular contributor. I don't know how you term it on my podcast. Ran with me for years. I want to say we're together for 5, 6 years with our weekly podcast. Always up for anything. Never said no. Like, some guests he was excited about. Some he probably wasn't. But if he wasn't, he never let on. He's a brilliant comic and a documentary filmmaker with 2 films out. We'll tell you about those as we have our conversation. And I just wanted you to meet him because I think he'll, if it's possible, be a regular visitor here too from time to time. Please, a warm welcome for J. Elvis Weinstein. Yes.
Well,
come on, J. Elvis.
Hi. Can you hear
Hello
me?
there. I left out what I think may be the credit that everybody's going to go, oh, and that is you as the original voice of Servo on Mystery Science Theater.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's who I am.
But you created that character of Servo.
I did indeed when I was but a lad. I was 17 at the time.
17 years old.
Yes.
And where were you living then when Mystery Science Theater, you guys were all putting that together?
This was a product of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
That's what I thought. Yeah, the Midwest. And interesting, you were on stage, as I recall, like as a 15-year-old or something, right?
Yes, that's when I started doing stand-up.
Right. You were. And so you fall in with these other comedians and you put Mystery Science Theater together. With you, who else was it?
Well, Joel Hodgson was the actual creator of it, and he asked Trace Beaulieu and I to join him at this UHF station at the time in Minneapolis. And we basically improv'd a show. And then when Comedy Central came on the air, they needed programming, and we could provide this very cheap 2-hour show for them.
Yeah, so you'd show a movie, and again, there's this thin premise about you out in space and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But then the human and the robots watch the movie and essentially just smart-ass their way through it.
Yeah, and that was the development of the show, because Joel's initial concept was sort of a play on the hosted local movie, the actor.
I see. Okay.
And he thought you would be a better host by actually going in and watching the movie with your guests rather than just coming in at the commercial breaks. And so as we did it each week, we started making more comments and more jokes, and and sort of seeing how many we could fit in without breaking it. And it turns out you can fit a lot of jokes.
It was what, boom, 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 boom. And since then, there have been all these knockoffs. I mean, it's become a format that I've seen used in comedy clubs and other venues.
Yeah, it is movie riffing is its own little subgenre of comedy now. And we absolutely do take some credit for that. Even though we had forebearers as well of people who were messing with movies, so we weren't like absolutely first to the scene.
Right, everybody's inspired by whatever. But so then you came out to Hollywood and you became a comedy writer, and you were a head writer. Were you head writer on one of the late shows? I think, right?
I was the head writer of Later with Greg Kinnear.
Right.
Which was Bob Costas had Later, and then Greg Kinnear took it over for a couple of years, and then.
But it was much more comedy based when you guys took it over. There were were sketches, and he had, my recollection is that, there was a commitment to comedy that there hadn't been on Costas, obviously.
No, it was much more of a standard late night talk show than Costas's thing, i.e. less entertaining and informing.
Right. What do you, now with the writer's strike, what do you make of what's going to happen? It seems like this is going to be a long haul, man. And I don't know at the end of it if anything good's going to be there for the writers.
Well, it can't be much worse. So, something good is going to be there at the end for the writers. And there's a sort of empirical fact that at some point you're going to need to make more stuff, and you're going to need us for that. So,
Yeah, right. And I'm not, and let me just say, I think you had to strike. I think the writers absolutely had to strike.
No, I agree. I agree. And I started, as we were talking about, 30 years ago now, doing this. And, it was an entirely different business when I came to Hollywood in the early 90s. It was just, everything was still based on the model of network television. And that model doesn't exist anymore the way it did, because that model also involved, selling to syndication packages and all these things that created a business model that made TV tenable. Because shows back then were all deficit financed, because one show that sold into syndication could pay for all those failures.
Right.
But that firewall of money isn't there for shows anymore.
Sure. That's a great point. I mean, and again, just to reiterate that it allowed studios and production companies to lose money on first run because there's so much more money coming in potentially if the thing goes into any additional runs.
Right. But the studios are the ones who rushed into this new business model without a model, and
right.
And just decided we can deficit finance everything. Netflix, how many billions of dollars did Netflix put into programming with no real plan to get it back, other than hopefully people will keep subscribing.
Well, it's funny. Danny Zucker was here. Was it yesterday, I think, or the day before? And
it was the day before.
Have you ever seen our show before, J. Elvis?
I'm sad to say, or I'm ashamed to say I haven't, because you're my friend, but I have not. No.
Oh, I thought once you said I'm ashamed to say, I still wasn't sure which way you were going to go. But anyway, Danny was here, and he said exactly what you just said, which is, hey, Netflix, we didn't tell you to do this. We didn't tell you to dump all this money into development. I mean, it's a new model. We didn't tell you to pick up that model and run with it the way you have. Why are the writers being asked to own your mistake?
Right. And that's what it feels like,
Yeah. One of the things you've done, though, and I just want to mention this in our last couple of minutes, because I loved your documentary films, and I think it's so difficult to do, to be a filmmaker, but to do documentaries particularly, because you're bound to reality and particularly, both films, I think, have their own personality. I was going to say particularly the second one, where you're kind of riding shotgun with all these comics and you're having to catch moments and then put them together after the fact. Your first movie, though, you have a story to tell. So could you just quickly, in summary, tell my audience, who might not be familiar with the two films, about your two movies? I think they might be of interest to the. They're not political. They're not. I mean, they're really a slice of show business, I think.
Yeah, they're two very different slices of show business, but yeah, one of the first that we'll talk about is called Michael Debar, Who Do You Want Me to Be? And it's about Michael Debar, who is this fascinating and incredibly entertaining figure of rock and roll and TV and movies. He's basically like this linchpin of 50 years of show business, where he was one of the pioneers of glam rock. He was in To Sir with Love with Sidney Poitier. He appeared at Live Aid as the lead singer of the Power Station. Meanwhile, he was like MacGyver's archenemy, and he was, guest starring throughout the 70s and 80s on like every big TV show. So, but you've probably never heard of him. And so when you see him, you go, oh my God, I've seen him everywhere. Yeah, you go, oh, that guy from the Seinfeld episode, or that guy from the,
WKRP or whatever.
For me, my first contact was WKRP in Cincinnati, where he was in this punk band called Scum of the Earth.
Yeah.
so
anyway, you're telling the story of his world, and it's
a full biopic, but yeah,
it was insane how key to Hollywood this guy Michael Debar was. He was hanging out with. His home became the nucleus of Hollywood for a few years. I mean, major stars rolling through this guy's life, and it's wild to hear those stories told by all of these different people in your movie.
Yeah, I have great witnesses throughout the movie, and who all have a loving but clear-eyed view of Michael. So
Yeah.
it's a very self-aware. I call him a benevolent narcissist.
Well, he himself, I think, wouldn't argue with that title.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But he, the benevolence is that he absolutely rewards your attention.
Albert, can you'll Google it, Michael Desbarres, it's Desbarres. Maybe just put a banner up for the end of the conversation with Jay Elvis. So we'll mention it again. I'd love for people to see it. It's totally streamable and rentable or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's on various platforms. You can either watch it with commercials for free or rent it.
And then the other film you did was I Need You to Kill,
which I think you see over my shoulder here. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. I Need You to Kill.
Yes, and that was about the stand-up comedy scene in Asia, as seen through the eyes of 3 American comics, including Tom Segura, who's become very big since, and Pete Lee and Chad Daniels on this tour of Hong Kong and Singapore and Macau, that I got to tag along and give my version of what Comics on the Road is, and give my version of what this foreign comedy scene is.
Well, that's the thing, that they're over in Asia. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall and just seen those guys as they traveled across the country. But the fact they were traveling across that country, you know what I mean, overseas in Asia, that made it really good.
Yeah, they were absolutely fish out of water in many ways.
Yeah. The Love Jay Elvis. Wait a minute. Let me just put my credibility glasses on so I can read this. Joanne says, Love Jay Elvis. That's how I found you, Mark, on that podcast.
There you
Is
go.
that right?
We were sticky.
Wow. And Karen says, it says hello and offers us some financial support. You know, one of the things that happens on this platform, so again, that's called I Need You to Kill. But I'll mention it again.
That's available on Amazon Prime.
Okay, Amazon Prime. One of the things that we do here, Jay Elvis, which is something that we didn't really do on the old podcast, and I certainly didn't do it on broadcast, is ask for money. It's the weirdest thing. And you need to do it, because if you don't, you're going to go away. You know what I mean? You must pay for all this stuff. Right. So,
for example, I have a podcast, Thought Spiral, with Andy Kindler.
You do, and you've just celebrated how many episodes? I thought you had some big milestone.
We crossed the 300 threshold a couple months ago.
If it weren't for you, that podcast would never get done. Am I right?
That is correct. Yes, it's fair to say. Yes,
you're the oomph behind that podcast. Kindler is the creative, I think, addition.
Okay, all right. All right. Okay, all right, whatever. Sure. I am the infrastructure. Yes.
Yeah, you're the infrastructure. Well, that's called Thought Spiral. So check it out. Jay Elvis, I love that you visited. Please come visit again. So again, Jay Elvis's 2 movies. There it is. Michael Desbarres. Who Do You Want Me to Be? God, Albert, very well done.
Yes.
And Ed Begley's in the movie. Also, Gabriel Byrne, I think, is in it.
Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols.
Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. Don Johnson. Thank you. I think it's a really good watch. It's not political. You'll just enjoy the ride. Michael Desbarres, Who Do You Want Me to Be? And the other movie is...
Are you really doing a show where you have to keep going? It's not political. Don't worry.
No. I mean, I do a mostly political show, and
that's what I thought.
Yeah, but I like to tell people that because I think it's a good ride. You know what I mean? Without having to be, it's not like a frontline episode that I'm plugging.
No. I have no agenda.
I Need You to Exactly. I Need You to Kill is the other one, and there it is. It's on Amazon Prime. Jay Elvis, I could talk to you all day. I hope you will come back and join us. Just you wisecracking about life in general is something that I miss. And
ask me about funnier things next time, and I will light up the place.
Well, Jay Elvis does have a comedy album called Chunks.
Thank you for remembering that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I bought it twice. That's how much I loved you. But it's on iTunes, and it's really funny, and it's still funny. And a lot of that stuff is,
also not political. It's not political.
Also not political. Exactly.
Because I think we can all agree. We can just all agree it's a terrible time to be alive.
But the alternative is pretty grim too. So let's, yeah.
True that.
When you come back next time, tell everybody how you beat cancer, okay? Or you can just...
I just got a scan this week. Still beating it.
I love it, kid. I love it. J. Elvis Weinstein. Bye, J. Elvis. Bye-bye. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.